If you're an artist or a designer and ever wondered what a laser machine could do for your artwork, then this video is for you. I always had this assumption that they could just cut and engrave wood, and that misconception kept me on the fence for years. So when xTool reached out and asked me to test their S1 diode laser, I realized it could do so much more. And just as an FYI, while I've been a designer for the past 15 years, I had never touched a laser machine before this, so this is very much from a beginner's perspective. If you're new here, my name is Tila, and I help creatives build and monetize their digital art skills. Creating products with a laser definitely qualifies. Just take a look at this. It's a fully enclosed diode laser, which means you don't need to worry about protective eyewear because it's already built into the lid. There are a bunch of safety features built in. It has an emergency stop button on the side, and there are 2 fire detection sensors located on the inside. If you want to keep your machine locked from anyone else when not in use, just remove the little fob on the back. The laser came with a hose to keep any smoke or fumes out of your home. I upgraded this a bit with an inline fan which sucks any smoke, especially when cutting, straight out, making it a perfect laser for any home office or interior space. Something I really like about the S1 is all the interchangeable options it comes with, so you can really tailor it to fit whatever your needs are. The laser module itself is really easy to remove and even to clean. All you have to do is unhook it, clean the lens and the lens cap with a little rubbing alcohol, and then snap it all back together. I have the 10 watt, but you can also use their IR module, which is great for engraving metal, or their more powerful 20 watt or 40 watt modules that can cut thicker wood and it can laser items quicker. I also have the riser base with mine, which came with a honeycomb panel. This helps keep items in place, and I can laser larger items because of the extra height. We'll get to the rotary tool in just a little bit, but it's also an option if you'd like to engrave things like tumblers. The bed size is roughly 24 inches by 15 inches, which is pretty impressive. But if you'd like to create large signage, they have a solution for that too in their conveyor system. The first thing we'll make is a set of earrings. I'm using 3mm basswood for these, but I don't want them to have that unfinished look, so I'm going to give my wood a little bit of a whitewash on the front and the back before we begin. And all I'm doing is watering down some white acrylic paint for this. While it's drying, let's set up some test cuts and engraves so we can pick the perfect settings for our earrings. xTool software is called Creative Space, and it's super easy to use. To do a material test, you just pick any shape you'd like. I'm just going to grab a square and drag it out. Next, we need to tell it that we want this square to be cut, so I'll apply a cut setting. xTool has a pretty large library of materials that has suggestions for settings, and 3mm basswood is in there, so I'm going to select that. With the square selected, we'll apply a material test. So all we have to do is define what we want our highest and lowest speed and power settings to be. And just like that, it puts it together for us. Now let's set one up for engraving following the exact same process. Since wood can burn pretty easily when the power's really high and the speed's really low, let's remove a couple of those so we don't spend time engraving things that we know will burn. To do that, all you have to do is ungroup the material test, select the squares that you want to delete, and when you're done, just regroup everything. Now we need to put the wood in the laser so we can cut and engrave it. I'll place the piece on the honeycomb panel and then secure it with the magnetic clips it came with. We've got our material tests all ready. First, we need to let the laser know what the distance is between the laser and our wood. So all you have to do is hit this little distance icon and it'll check the distance. Next, we need to figure out where to put our artwork so it'll engrave and cut in the right places. To do this, we'll use xTool's marking system. Down here, just hit Start Marking. You can mark rectangles, circles, polygons, and lines with the marking tool, and you can mark multiple items at a time if you're batch cutting or engraving, so pretty cool. Let's select rectangle, and then we'll go over to the machine, slide the laser module so the crosshairs line up with the top corner, and then hit the button on the front of the machine. Drag the laser module to the bottom right, and then hit that button on the front again. Then go back to the computer and hit the button that says Done. All right, now we have our area defined. So all you need to do is drag the material test into that marked area and resize them if you need to. I'm going to also draw a rectangle around the test so the laser will cut it out of the larger piece of wood. And then I'll just be able to have it around if I need to reference it in the future. I'll use xTool's default recommendation for the cut settings for 3mm basswood. Hit process and you'll be brought to this screen where you can see the estimated time that it'll take right in the lower left-hand corner. And then you can also see the path that the laser is going to take to complete the job. It all looks good, so I'll hit start and then we'll go over to the machine and hit the front button to get it going. Let's take a look at our test now so we know which settings to use whenever we're engraving or cutting 3mm basswood. So xTool recommends a power of 80 and a speed of 200, which is this one right here. And I do like that one, but I also like 80 power 100 speed. So it's a little slower and we get a deeper engrave and a darker engrave out of it. And then for the cut settings, you can see even at the highest power of 100 and the slowest speed that we tested of 10, it still isn't slow enough to cut all the way through the wood. So I'm going to use xTool's recommendation of 100 power 5 speed, which is what was applied to the rectangle that we cut out. Now that we have our settings, we can proceed with our earrings. The wood is dry, so let's put it into the laser bed. In Creative Space, I'm going to hit the plus at the top for a new file, hit upload, and bring in my art. I made this artwork using Procreate on my iPad, and then I vectorized it using Adobe Illustrator. But if you're not familiar with vectorization, no need to worry because xTool has an option built in for you. All you have to do is drag or upload your JPEG, and then hit this Trace Image button over here. You can adjust the settings as needed, and you've got a file that's ready to cut, score, or engrave. Let's define the areas that we want to cut and engrave now using the settings we obtained from our material test. I'm selecting each area using the Layers panel, which works very similar to Procreate or Adobe. When a layer is selected, the artwork on that layer is also selected. You can also lock layers or change their visibility. Now it's time to set the distance like we did before, and we'll mark the area. Let's drag the earrings into that marked area, hit Process, Start, and head over to the machine, hit the front button, and watch it go. I followed the same material test with cardstock. Yes, cardstock. You definitely want to use lower settings since you're cutting and engraving paper, but it works like a charm. Here you can see me engraving and cutting the card backing for the earrings. Now we just need to attach the hardware to each earring, slip it into the card back, and we've got a sellable product. Speaking of cardstock, one of my tests on craft paper cardstock showed a low engrave setting could yield a white color. I got super excited about this, so I wanted to try it, and this was the result. I have a sellable engraved art print now with 2 different engrave settings and a really fun texture, which can easily set you apart from competitors. I've also used the S1 to enhance some of my greeting card designs with wood details. If you're gifting or selling stationery, it's a great little element to include to make it stand out and add value. Now I want to share some projects that the S1 has me really excited about. We already covered basswood and cardstock. Now let's engrave canvas. This is a little zippered pouch. You can see me running an engrave test on an extra one right here. I made this test a little larger since canvas has a noticeable texture. Once I decided on my settings, I applied them and watched it burn. And now I've got another sellable item that is a piece of cake to run as many times as I need to. I have this space behind where I sit that definitely needed something, and I found this great rustic wood frame from Hobby Lobby, so it's time to fill it. I did a material test on the back, but I had to stop it early because it started to burn a little more than I wanted to when the power got high and the speed got low, but I got the info that I needed from it, popped in my settings, and I engraved my logo onto the framed wood. It now fills that space perfectly. Plus, I'll now have my logo within any future video I create. Speaking of signs, as a lettering artist, I couldn't resist making a stacked sign. Since painting the wood went so well with the earrings, I pre-painted a piece again. In Adobe Illustrator, I created the stacked elements by selecting my vectorized lettering and using the Object Expand Path option, and then just repeated that twice. I cropped my artboard around the lettering, then saved it all as an SVG, which I uploaded into xTool's Creative Space. I separated the pieces out and applied my basswood cut settings from earlier. Because I had 3 pieces and I needed each piece to fit perfectly into my pre-painted areas, I marked multiple areas and then slid each respective piece where they needed to go, and then I began processing. To assemble my pieces, all I did was use basic tacky glue, which dries clear and has a surprisingly super strong bond. This cute little sign could really be hung anywhere with some contact strips, and I just love it. It was such a satisfying project to make, from painting to cutting to assembly, and then you just get such a polished result. And my daughter loved it so much she wanted to make one too. So I had her write her name in Procreate, I prepped the file, and then we assembled it together. And now she can't wait to hang it in her bedroom. Let's move on to a hardwood project next. I picked up this acacia wood trivet and cutting board from Hobby Lobby and created some designs for them. I ran my material test on the back of the trivet, and then I got engraving. Here's how the trivet came out. And here's how the cutting board came out, which I am just obsessed with. I used 2 different engrave settings to show leaf variation, and it came out better than I could have ever imagined. It took about 45 minutes to fully engrave the cutting board using the 10-watt module and about 20 minutes for the trivet, but both of those could have been optimized with the stronger 20-watt or 40-watt laser modules. Last but not least, let's create a full wrap tumbler. You'll need the rotary tool for this, and I switched out the rollers that it came attached with for the chuck, and this took me about 15 minutes to put together. Once you have it assembled, you'll want to put it on the crumb tray at the bottom of your riser base. Plug into the rotary, and then the other end plugs right inside the front right corner. I'm going to put my tumbler in and check to make sure it's level. It's a little off, so I'm adding a scrap piece of basswood underneath one of the ends. That seemed to do the trick, so I'm tightening it up, then placing the module over the area that will be engraved to obtain my distance setting. In Creative Space, I'm going to bring in my artwork and apply my engraved settings. You'll want to make sure to select Use Rotary Attachment, and since I'm using the chuck, I also need to select that. I can get more precise measurements using millimeters, so I'm using the included tape measure and measuring the circumference, which they have listed as perimeter, and it'll calculate the diameter automatically, so you definitely don't need to do both of those. I've got 240 millimeters for my circumference, and now I'm going to measure the length, which is about 165 millimeters for the area that I want to engrave. I'm going to position my artwork right now, even though we'll have to change it slightly in just a bit. So let's draw out a rectangle the size of the circumference and the length. In the upper right, make sure you toggle off output so it won't accidentally engrave this rectangle. Place your artwork how you'd like it so it fills in that rectangle. Next, let's figure out the distance. Once we have that, it's time to frame it. So hit framing, and then we'll go over to the machine. I want to line it up with the logo in the front, so I'll manually turn the chuck to do that. I also place the module at the topmost area where I want it to engrave, and then hit the button. You can do this as many times as you need to make sure it's aligned just the way you want it, and when you're happy, head back to Creative Space. Now we know where the top of our tumbler is, so we need to move our artwork and rectangle over so things are aligned. When you're happy with the positioning, it's time to process. So hit process, check on the time, cross your fingers, and then hit start, and let's watch it engrave. As someone who thought that laser machines were only good for cutting and engraving wood, I couldn't be happier to be proven wrong. I've created all of these items and I'm just getting started. I find myself daydreaming about what else I could try all the time now. The S1 machine has made laser cutting and engraving incredibly approachable, especially for a beginner like me who had never lasered anything before trying it out. xTool has made everything super user-friendly, from assembly to their software to the resources they provide online. Speaking honestly as a complete beginner from just my first month, you can tell that this is a very well-crafted and well-thought-out machine. While I really enjoy using the 10-watt, especially for details, there are times where I wish I had a little more speed or power, so the 40-watt is definitely on my wish list. Another couple of things to note that I noticed is that the crumb tray isn't attached, so it can slide kind of easily, and when you're sliding it in the slots of the riser base, it can give you like a really, really loud screech. So all I do is kind of lift it up as I slide it in, and that solved that problem for me. I also noticed that the honeycomb tray is not the same size as the crumb tray, and I was like totally thrown off by that. And it took me a little while to figure out where to put it, so I just looked at the pictures in the manual, and it's been fine in the lower right corner. The lid also scratches kind of easily, so you'll definitely want to avoid putting anything on top of it. But these are all really minor issues in the grand scheme of things, especially when the laser and the software have been so reliable for me. I wasn't sure how much I would use it, but I've used it like every other day ever since it arrived. And I'm thinking about my artwork in 2D and 3D now, which is kind of cool, and it's brought on just a flood of new ideas. I like being able to think of my artwork as products now, and I'm really excited to pursue that even further. I left a link to the specific S1 bundle that you saw throughout this entire video, so you can check that out right in the video description. But I do want to mention just a few differentiators with xTool that you'll want to be aware of if this is something you're considering too. xTool offers a trade-up program, and all you have to do is fill out a simple form on their website about any current machines you have. They don't even need to be xTool brand, and you don't need to return anything. After reviewing your info, xTool will provide you a credit that you can use towards a new machine simply because you're upgrading to xTool. It's honestly pretty cool, and I'll leave a link in the video description to that program if you'd like to learn more. I joined their Facebook groups, and now I have a flood of tips and ideas in my feed from more seasoned users. I honestly can't believe how much I've learned in such a short amount of time, and the community is so helpful. I know that if I ever run into any future issues, I can just ask it in the group and get answers any time of day. The S1 also supports their latest screen printing kit, which you'll see more from me on very soon. So be sure to subscribe so you'll be notified as soon as that publishes. Once again, links to everything mentioned in this video are right in the video description. And obviously I'm still pretty new to all of this, but if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments section and I'll do my absolute best to answer them. I'll see you next time.